Before we do, though, I want to ask, turn to this with a question to Matt about, as we watch these revolutions in the Middle East and North Africa and potentially other parts of the world, how do you see this tension and more between the desire for information, the desire for a free flow of news, and governments that still want to control what people know?
You know, you talk about the Middle East, but actually perhaps a more relevant example is the disaster in Japan, because what everybody wants to know is what is the extent, if any, of nuclear fallout from this horrible disaster of the earthquake and the tsunami. And what has been happening, Judy, in the past 2 weeks is we, and I think others, have been trying to tread fearlessly and carefully at the same time to get the scope and extent of this disaster in a nuclear context. And it's been extremely difficult because, as you well know, because you've been reporting on it yourself, there have been all kinds of conflicting statements coming out of official sources within the government, and all kinds of surmises and assertions from experts, so-called experts, on what has happened to these nuclear facilities. And you can't be opposed to any of it. I mean, you can't be opposed to any of the information that is available. In fact, you want to read it and see it as soon as you can, but you have great difficulty figuring out, well, who is actually most accurate here, because there's so much at stake. Now, you can apply that, of course, to Libya right now. You can apply it to Tunisia. You can apply it to Bahrain, the same sort of things. There's all kinds of information. Some of it will turn out to be misinformation. The appetite for it is insatiable. We are embracing it as fast as we can, taking it in as fast as we can, and we're constantly having to decide, okay, how do we know this is true? How can we prove that it's true? That's the process. And, I guess I would say that all things considered, I'm so grateful that we have so much information available. Yes, it makes it much more difficult. The old days, you'd go to a press conference and there would be one statement on the hour, and you try to parse it and deconstruct it. And today, if you will, there are millions of statements that you have to do that with. But that's better, actually, than where we were. It just makes our jobs more difficult, but so what? It's interesting.
It definitely makes our jobs more difficult. Howard, from your perspective, how do you see that battle?
Well, I come from a little different angle, because I think of it in terms of how does it affect where we spend our money, maybe, rather than from a business as to how to deal with it and adjust to it. And I think from my standpoint, there's a lot of good that comes from that, because a lot of places we work, there's not a lot. You have governance issues and corruption issues, and you have so many things that hold people back and keep them in poverty. And so I think that the ability for people to voice, their opinions and to be able to be heard around the globe, which couldn't have been done, really even a decade ago, the way it can be done today, is extremely valuable. When you're working, and there's some of the women here who I talk to, when you look at what happened in Kenya a few years ago in the Eldoret area, and you look at what's happening in Zimbabwe today, and you look at, these are things that have been going on. There's a lot of undertones to it. The fact that people today can actually articulate from those areas. It used to be you had to send a reporter there. Today, you really don't. I think you still do, but I think actually in a way, the more friction that is caused by those kinds of competing things really is more of a good thing than a bad thing.
I think Howard has just said something really profound, especially in the context of this group here, and that is, as we all know, and this group especially knows, wherever poverty is greatest, the gender gap is widest.
Absolutely.
And what is really so encouraging, actually, about this information age that we're in is that so many women are immediately empowered to express what they see and what they observe in so many ways that we never had before. And so we're hearing from the other 50% of the population in many more ways than we ever did before. And this is just such a wonderful advance from where we were, because so many of the information channels 15, 20 years ago were essentially controlled by only one part of this divide, men everywhere.
Well, it's also from locations that you never could have had it before.
Yeah.
And the ability to be heard everywhere, I think, is getting just easier and easier. You were talking about Japan, and I was thinking about the what has become my main source of information is a guy whose Twitter feed I follow, Joichi Ito, completely bilingual, bicultural. I know him because of some work that we've done with him. His processing of Japanese media gives me a very different take on what is going. I would highly recommend it to anybody. Joy Ito, J-O-I. And another example is universal subtitles. It's a project that we funded by something called Miro, the Participatory Culture Foundation. It is, if you think of Wikimedia, but for translation of video. And so you have the video, whoever it is, the woman in southern India, or the report coming out of Tunisia, or a movie, and it becomes available to the crowd to translate and do subtitles, and available to the crowd to correct in very much the same way as Wikipedia corrects what was wrong in the first place. And if you think about it, it allows for almost instant translation. I look at a report that will report on what Al Jazeera is reporting. I'd kind of rather understand what Al Jazeera is reporting in the first place. There's value in both, but I'd really like to hear closer to the original source, and I think this is a way of allowing the voice to be genuinely heard in a universal way.